Rain whispered against the windows of Millie's roadside diner, tracing crooked silver lines down the glass. The neon sign outside sputtered in the fog, half dead, the E in eats flickering like a dying heartbeat. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee and fried bacon clung to the air, mixing with the low hum of a jukebox stuck between songs. It was a place that time forgot until that night. When everything changed, Clara Finch sat alone in booth 7, a vanilla milkshake sweating on the table before her. The metal braces on her legs pressed uncomfortably against the seat, but she smiled anyway, humming softly to herself. Hope lived in her voice, a fragile, trembling kind of hope that clung to ordinary things. She had spent the whole week saving her change for that milkshake. Friday nights at Millie's were her escape. The door jingled open, letting in a gust of cold air and the smell of rain-soaked asphalt. 3 boys swaggered in all noise and ego. Locals high school seniors who thought their laughter was power. The leader, Brett Corman, carried the sharp grin of someone who'd never been told no. His friends trailed behind him like shadows, hungry for his approval. "Hey, look," Brett said, nodding toward Clara's booth. "Finch's little sister, right? The broken bird?" The waitress Millie stiffened behind the counter. "Don't start, Brett." But Brett just smirked. "Relax, Millie. We're just saying hi." They approached the booth. Clara kept her eyes on the straw, her hands folded tight in her lap. Her heart raced. "Please," she whispered, though whether she meant for them to hear it or not, she couldn't tell. "What's that?" Brett said, leaning closer. "Didn't catch that." His shadow fell across her face as the jukebox crackled, a faint country tune cutting in and out. Rain beat harder against the windows. "I said, please leave me alone," Clara said softly. Her voice quivered, but she met his eyes. Brett's grin faltered for just a heartbeat, then returned meaner. "You've got some nerve, Finch." Reached out, snatched her milkshake, and took a slow sip. The straw bent under his teeth. "It tastes like pity," he said. Clara's eyes welled with tears. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The silence pressed against every wall until it snapped when Brett's hand struck her cheek. The sound cracked like a gunshot. The diner froze. Forks clinked onto plates. Somewhere the coffee pot hissed. Clara didn't cry. She just sat there wide-eyed, her breath shuddering. The red mark on her face bloomed like a warning. Millie shouted, "Get out, Brett!" Now, the boys laughed in easy, defiant tan, sauntered toward the door. "Wasn't our fault she's so damn fragile," Brett muttered. Then they were gone. Leaving behind the echo of their cruelty and the smell of wet leather, Clara's shaking hand reached for the spilled milkshake. Millie hurried over, her eyes shining with tears. "Sweetheart, it's okay. It's over now." But Clara only whispered, "No, it's not." Outside, thunder rolled across the highway. An hour passed, the diner emptied. The rain slowed to a steady drizzle. Millie was wiping down the counter when the bell above the door chimed again. 6 men stepped inside, bikers, dressed in black leather, faces shadowed beneath dripping helmets. They filled the doorway like storm clouds. None of them spoke. They simply stood, silent, scanning the diner with eyes that carried weight, eyes that saw everything. One of them pointed toward booth 7. Millie's voice caught in her throat. "We're closed," she managed. The tallest biker stepped forward, rainwater pooling beneath his boots. His voice was low, gravel-thick. "We know," he said. And as the door swung shut behind them, the neon sign outside flickered once and went dark. The storm had passed by dawn, but the world hadn't yet exhaled. Millie's roadside diner stood alone on the stretch of highway, soaked in a gray morning light that revealed too much and comforted nothing. The sign buzzed faintly, the M flickering in and out like a weak pulse. Inside, the smell of coffee and bleach tangled in the air. Someone had tried to clean up the night before, but no rag could scrub away the unease. Detective Rowan Price parked his unmarked sedan beside a line of fresh tire tracks. The call had come in just after sunrise, a disturbance, a fight maybe. But the dispatcher's voice had been strange, uneasy, like she wasn't sure what to label it. "You'll want to see this one yourself, Detective." He pushed open the door. The bell jingled once, timidly. Millie stood behind the counter, her hair pulled back, her eyes swollen from lack of sleep. You the detective? She asked, voice brittle as paper. Price nodded, flashing his badge. Rowan Price. I heard there was trouble last night. Trouble, she repeated, almost laughing. That was one word for it. He slid into a booth near the door and flipped open his notepad. Start from the beginning. Millie hesitated. Her gaze drifted to booth 7, where the vinyl seats still bore a faint pink stain from a spilled milkshake. It started with Clara Finch, she said quietly. She comes in every Friday night. Sweet girl, braces on her legs, always orders the same thing, a vanilla shake and fries, Price wrote. Clara Finch, age 17, and the boys. Rhett Corman, Jack Hayes, Dean Porter. High school seniors? They were drunk, I think. Loud, mean. Her voice faltered. They hit her. Price's pen paused midair. And after that, they left. An hour later, 6 men came in, bikers, big, quiet. They didn't say much. She shivered. Just looked around, then at booth 7 like they knew exactly what happened. What did they do? Millie looked down at her hands. They sat there for a while. Ordered coffee, didn't drink it. When they left, one of them put something under the table. Price raised an eyebrow. Something. I didn't touch it. I couldn't. Stood, walking slowly toward booth 7. The morning light bled through the blinds, striping the seat with pale gold. The air smelled faintly of gasoline and rain. He crouched, running his fingers under the table edge. Something rough brushed against his skin. When he pulled it free, found a photograph. It was old Seapide-owned, curling at the corners. 6 men stood in front of the diner, their leather jackets marked with a winged skull insignia. All were young, strong, smiling like men who feared nothing. Behind them, the sign above the diner read Millie's Eats, untouched by time. Price turned it over. On the back, written in faint ink, Brothers protect what others forget. The words stirred something inside him, though he didn't know why. The handwriting didn't match the photograph's AIGA was too clean, too deliberate. Someone had written that recently. Do you know any of these men? He asked. Millie squinted, then shook her head slowly. No, but that emblem on their jackets. It's the same one those bikers wore last night. Price slipped the photograph into his coat pocket. I'll need to talk to Clara Finch. Millie's face paled. You can't. Her mom called this morning. Clara's missing. Price froze. Missing? She left home before dawn? No note. Just gone. Outside, thunder rumbled again, though the sky was clear. Price looked down at the photograph, feeling the paper tremble between his fingers. For a heartbeat, he could have sworn the faces in the picture were smiling wider. And somewhere far down the highway, engines began to roar. Detective Rowan Price's office was quiet except for the low hum of the desk lamp and the rhythmic tapping of rain against the window. Outside, the storm had crept back in, muttering over the town like an unspoken threat. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of old paper and dust. On the desk before him lay the photograph from booth 7, its edges yellowed. Its story sealed behind a smile to calm for reality. Price stared at it for the 100th time. 6 men, leather jackets, insignia gleaming like oil in sunlight. Behind them, Millie's Eats, decades younger. There was something wrong about the way the men looked, something too deliberate. As if they were posing for more than just a picture. He flipped it over again. The words still glared at him. Brothers protect what others forget. The ink shimmered faintly under the lamplight. He frowned, leaning closer. The writing seemed almost wet. He brushed it, lightly, no smudge. Yet the lines gleamed oddly, as if they'd been written not with pen, but with something else. Invisible ink. He reached for the small ultraviolet torch in his drawer, a habit from old forensic work. When the blue light washed over the photograph, a second message bled through the surface like a ghost rising from water. To booth 7, midnight. Look beneath. Price's pulse spiked. The handwriting matched the first line perfectly. Someone wanted this found in by him, it seemed. He looked again at the date stamped faintly in the photograph's corner. October 13th, 1965. 60 years ago to the day. He checked the clock. 9:42 p.m., 3 hours to midnight. He leaned back, exhaling. The hum of the lamp flickered. He'd been a detective long enough to know when a case wasn't just a case. Something about this, about Clara Finch, about the bikers, about that diner felt wound together by invisible hands. He picked up the phone and dialed. "Millie's Diner," came the voice, thin and trembling. "Millie, it's Price. I need the diner kept locked tonight. Don't let anyone in. Understand?" There was a pause, then a whispered, "Detective, are you? Are you going back there?" "Yes." "Midnight." Another pause. "Then you won't be alone." He frowned. But before he could ask, the line clicked. Dead. By the time Price pulled up to the diner again, the highway was drowned in fog. The neon sign was out completely now, only the faint buzz of electricity humming through its wires. The diner's windows glowed dimly from the inside, one light on, just above booth 7. He stepped through the door. The bell didn't ring this time. The diner was empty, or at least it appeared to be. He walked toward the booth, flashlight in hand. The air smelled of stale coffee and rain-soaked leather. On the table sat something new, a small, silver locket, its hinge rusted but intact. Inside was a picture of a man and a little girl. The man's jacket bore the same skull and wing insignia. The girl, smiling, gap-toothed toi, was unmistakably Clara Finch. Her father, Price's chest tightened. He looked under the table. The floorboards were scuffed, one corner slightly lifted. He crouched, pried it open, and found a folded note tucked inside. "We ride when the innocent fall. Justice rides at dawn." There was also a small object wrapped in oilcloth. When he unwrapped it, a brass key gleamed up at him. Etched with the number 7, a whisper slipped through the diner, soft, almost childlike. "You found it?" Price spun, flashlight slicing through the shadows. "Who's there?" Silence. The jukebox crackled to life, a single static-filled note trembling through the air. Then, faintly, a song began, an old tune from the 60s. Outside engines rumbled again, distant but drawing closer. Price looked at the locket, the key, the note, then toward the window where the fog pressed thick as breath. Something was coming, and he wasn't sure anymore whether he was the hunter or the bait. Midnight had arrived like a thief, silent and suffocating. Fog wrapped the highway in thick gray coils, and the distant hum of engines made Detective Rowan Price's chest tighten. Every instinct he had told him to leave, to wait for backup, but something in the photograph, in the locket, and in the note whispered otherwise. Booth 7. Look beneath. He parked his car 50 feet from the diner and approached on foot. Every step squelched in the wet asphalt, his flashlight bobbing across rain-slicked walls. The neon sign above the diner was dead now, a faint orange flicker marking the M like the last pulse of a heart. Pushing open the door, the bell didn't jingle. It hung silently. Inside, the diner was empty. Booth 7 waited, as if it had been waiting for him all along. The locket sat on the table, gleaming faintly in the flashlight beam. Price picked it up, flipping it open once more. The photograph inside, a young Clara Finch and a man in the biker jacket, caught his breath. Her smile was hopeful, unbroken. The memory of that hope was almost painful, fragile as spun glass. He knelt and pried at the floorboards beneath the booth. The board lifted easily, revealing a small cavity. Inside lay the folded oilcloth he had found earlier in the locket, trapped around a set of yellowed papers. He unfolded them carefully. Maps, coordinates, handwritten notes. Each one was dated. Decades ago, yet some were signed in a hand he recognized from the photograph. The same ink, the same careful script. A soft creak drew his attention. He froze. From the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, leather jacket glinting faintly in the dim light. 6 more figures stepped out behind him, each a ghost of the men in the photograph, their faces hidden beneath helmets now removed. The tallest spoke first, voice gravelly but calm. "You're late, Detective." Price's heart raced, but he straightened. "Who are you, and where's Clara?" The man removed his helmet, revealing a scarred but familiar face, one that mirrored one of the bikers in the old photograph. "We've been waiting for the right time. She's safe. For now." Price's chest rose with relief, but it was short-lived. The man reached into his jacket and handed him a folded sheet of paper. On it, a single line was written: "The road chooses its protectors, and the innocent will not wait forever." "What does this mean?" Price demanded. The man's eyes softened. "Clara's father made a promise long ago. His brothers carry it now. That diner, booth 7. It's all part of the path. But it isn't just hers. It's yours too, if you're willing to see it." Price frowned. "See what?" Before the man could answer, the lights flickered violently. The old jukebox sputtered to life, static singing through the air. The 6 bikers froze, glancing toward the door. Price followed their gaze. Through the fogged windows, 6 motorcycles idled outside, engines rumbling low, synchronized as if alive. The sound vibrated through the diner's floorboards, into his chest and into his mind. The leader's gaze met his. "Midnight isn't just a time," he said. "It's a test." Price swallowed hard. "A test of what?" "Judgment, the willingness to ride." He looked down at the locket in his hands, at the key engraved with a 7, at the maps and notes, and realized this wasn't just about rescuing Clara anymore. It was about understanding the path her father had left. About stepping into something bigger than himself. Outside, the engines grew louder, threatening to break the windows. A foghorn of metal and gasoline called to him, daring him to move, to choose. Price's hand tightened on the key. He rose slowly, feeling the weight of decades in his chest. The doorway beckoned, dark and dangerous, yet strangely promising. And then the leader whispered just loud enough for him to hear. "Once you step through that door, detective, there's no turning back." The fog pressed against the glass. The engines roared. The door cracked open. Price exhaled, heart hammering, hope and fear mingling like fire and ice. He stepped forward. The night air hit Detective Rowan Price like a wall, sharp and cold. Fog clung to the highway like a living thing, curling around the tires of the motorcycles parked in the diner's lot. Engines purred, low and threatening, vibrating through the soles of his boots. He tightened his grip on the brass key, the weight of it strangely grounding. It's almost comforting. The 6 bikers flanked him as he approached the machines. Each bike gleamed black under the dim light of the diner's exterior lamps, chrome catching fleeting glints like distant stars. Price had no idea where they would take him, no clue what awaited beyond the fog. But the photograph in booth 7 and the notes in the oilcloth had planted something dangerous in his chest. Hope. Hope that Clara Finch might still be found. Hope that justice long delayed was within reach. The leader, the man whose face mirrored the old photograph, came up beside him. "You've seen the past," he said, voice gravelly, yet calm. "Now you ride into the present. Everything you need is in that key." Price looked down at it. He had no idea what the key unlocked, but instinct told him it was important. "And if I refuse?" he asked. The man's eyes hardened. "Then you'll be left behind. In some roads, don't wait." I swallowed. He had no choice. He swung his leg over the closest bike, cold metal pressing into his thigh. The engine rumbled beneath him and the vibrations ran up his spine. Beside him, the bikers adjusted, silent, deliberate. Then the leader kicked his bike to life, and the others followed in perfect sync. A wave of movement that pressed the air forward and made the fog thrum with energy. Price's pulse raced. The highway stretched before him, a ghostly ribbon vanishing into the mist. He had no map, no plan, just the faint, nagging sense that Clara Finch's safety and, perhaps the secret behind the old photograph stood on what came next. They rode. The wind tore at Price's coat, biting his skin, and the roar of the engines drowned out thought. The fog thickened, swirling into ghostly shapes that seemed almost sentient. Shadows danced on the asphalt. And then, in a clearing ahead, he saw it. A derelict gas station, long abandoned. Its pump handles rusted and windows shattered, but it was alive in a way that defied decay. A single light flickered inside, revealing a doorway that glowed faintly golden. The leader slowed, pulling his bike to a stop at the edge of the lot. Price's heart thumped against his ribs. This is it?" he asked. The leader nodded. "What's inside has waited for decades. For your choice, detective. Open the door. Price dismounted, key in hand. The brass was warm against his palm, like it had been waiting for him. He stepped toward the door. Every muscle in his body screamed caution. Every instinct told him danger was near. Yet the hope burning in him, the hope of saving Clara, of uncovering the truth, drove him forward. He inserted the key into the lock. The mechanism clicked, a sharp sound that echoed like a gunshot in the empty night. The door swung open slowly. Inside was darkness, thick and suffocating. But at the far end of the room, something shimmered, a faint glow, like sunlight filtered through amber. Price stepped forward. His boots scuffed across the dust, raising motes that danced in the golden light. And then he saw her. Clara Finch, sitting on an old chair, pale but alive, her braces glinting in the glow. She looked up, eyes wide, hope shimmering there like fragile glass. "Detective Price?" she whispered. He felt a relief so sharp it almost stunned him. "Clara, you're safe," he said, voice thick. But before he could reach her, the floorboards behind him creaked. He turned. 6 shadows had materialized, taller, darker than the bikers outside. Their faces were obscured, but the aura of danger was unmistakable. They had been waiting inside too. Price realized then, with a cold certainty, that the photograph, the locket, and the key had not led him to Clara alone. They had led him into a trap. The golden glow flickered. The shadows advanced, and somewhere deep in the room, a hidden mechanism began to click. Price's heart froze. The ride had only just begun. Detective Rowan Price's mind raced as the shadows closed in. The room smelled of dust and rust, with an underlying temps of something, metallic blood, perhaps, or oil. Clara Finch sat frozen in the chair, her eyes wide and shining with fear and fragile hope. She was alive, yes, but the moment was taut. Like a wire stretched across a canyon, ready to snap, Price stepped in front of her, key in hand, heart hammering. "Stay behind me," he whispered. His voice sounded louder than he intended, reverberating off the cracked walls. The shadows stopped just a few feet away. The tallest stepped forward, a glint of steel catching the faint golden light. "You shouldn't have come here, detective," the figure said. The voice was distorted, mechanical in a way that sent shivers down his spine. "Some truths are buried for a reason." Price swallowed, gripping the key. "I've already seen the buried truth. Now I want the whole story. Where is Clara's father? Where are you all coming from?" The shadow laughed, low and cold. "You think you're the first to follow the breadcrumbs? The photograph, the notes, the key, they were all set for someone to awaken the old pact." Price felt a chill. Old pact? The figure advanced, and Price realized the truth in an instant. The bikers from the diner, the men in the photograph, even the locket and the key, they weren't just protectors. They were part of a secret society, guardians of something hidden beneath Millie's diner for decades, waiting for the right person to find the key, the photograph, the proof that the pact still mattered. "You," the figure said, voice softening slightly, "are now part of it. If you survive the night, you'll understand why we protect the innocent. If not..." A gloved hand waved vaguely toward the shadows behind them. "The secret dies again." Price's pulse pounded. He had no choice. The hope in Clara's eyes anchored him. He pressed the key against a faintly outlined panel on the floor beneath the chair. A hidden latch clicked. The floor shifted, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. The shadows hesitated. Then, slowly, they receded, as if honoring the key's authority. Price crouched. "Clara, stay close. Whatever this is, we stick together." She nodded, trembling but determined. They descended into the staircase, the air growing colder, more oppressive with each step. At the bottom, a hidden chamber stretched before them, walls lined with decades of photographs, letters and newspaper clippings. There were trophies of protection, artifacts of people rescued, justice served outside the law, and warnings from the past. Price ran his fingers over the materials. His mind spun. All this, hidden under a diner for decades? A soft light flickered from the center of the room, revealing a pedestal with a small metallic box. Price opened it. Inside was a journal Clara's father's handwriting, preserved perfectly. The pages detailed the pact, the brothers who had vowed to protect those society ignored, yet the bikers who had carried that legacy forward. And then, at the very end, a single line: when the chosen arrives, hope is restored, and the path forward becomes clear. Price glanced at Clara. She smiled. Faintly, the first real hope he had seen all night. The key, the photograph, the locket had all led here. All of this wasn't just a mystery. It was a legacy, and now he realized they were its guardians. But before he could savor the revelation, a deep rumble shook the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. Outside, engines roared the bikers from the diner. Or maybe another faction entirely, pressing forward, drawn by the glow and the key. Price grabbed Clara's hand. "We need to move now." A sliver of hope, fierce and fragile, surged in his chest. They weren't trapped. Not yet. But as they turned to leave the hidden chamber, the staircase began to collapse behind them, a torrent of stone and wood cutting off the path they had come. Price froze. Clara clutched his arm. The choice was clear: forward into unknown darkness, or risk the past. Swallowing them whole, the engines outside thundered closer. He exhaled, tightened his grip on the key, and stepped forward, and the floor beneath them gave way.